Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Corey Webb, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Churn Zero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Supercharging Digital CS Using Support Insights. Before we get started, I do want to remind everyone that we are recording today's session, and we'll be sending out a link of the recording tomorrow via email. Throughout the presentation, I do want to ask you to go ahead and submit your questions, and we'll try and get to as many as we can at the Q&A portion at the end of this webinar. We also do have chat open up for this webinar, and we encourage you to go ahead and interact as we pose out some questions and some chat topics. Now I'm pleased to introduce to you our speaker today, Jaclyn Mullen. Jaclyn is the head of marketing at The Loops, which is an intelligent support operations platform that transforms the support experience, ensuring CS is at the heart of digital businesses. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Jaclyn, to get started.
So some of you may be wondering, where's Soumya? Surprise. Soumya actually got stuck in transit at the airport, and I am jumping in for her. Corey, Churn Zero, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for signing up and joining today, those of you that are participating in this webinar and those of you that get the replay as well. Super critical topic right now, supercharging digital CS. Some buzzwords that you probably hear and see a lot in your LinkedIn feed. The second piece of this is the idea of using support insights. So as Corey mentioned, we're going to jump in today to this topic at hand and make this engaging and participatory. I would really like to hear from those of you that are live with us today. But this word supercharge, I mean, Corey, we've seen it in blogs, we've seen it in webinar topics. I thought it'd be helpful to break down what this, essentially means at its core. And it really does stem from this idea of making things faster or more powerful, something that we've all probably been tasked with in 2024. And essentially, it's usually used in context with companies differentiating themselves by how they use technology to supercharge the assets that they already have. And I think that last piece is really key because we're going to be talking today about something that you likely already have, which is a support team and a success team, and how we could better align these teams under the premise of, frictionless, amazing CX, something that customers are yearning more and more for in a unified fashion. So the key takeaways that we are going to touch on today: identifying your current support and success disconnect. We don't want to make any assumptions. And I do understand that people that come to these webinars, some are working at very early stage companies, some are in much more established companies. But I think we've all heard that phrase, control the controllables. And we can all go back to basics as far as it's concerned across people, process, and technology. What are the things that are happening right now that we've been band-aiding, right? That we finally need to address because we are at this supercharge inflection point, right? The second bullet point here, what do we mean by support insights? Specifically from the seat that I'm in, I'm talking about contextualized data for you. And the reason why we're flagging this and bringing this to your attention as a success leader is you are going to start to see more terminology that is AI specific popping up. And it's important for you to understand, what that means as you start to see it, right? And then last but not least, putting this into practice and again, accelerating, supercharging with AI. Some of it that you have available to you at your disposal, some of it that you'll be learning about today. So essentially, we've got a full agenda and we'll keep things moving along. Right now, this is one of those times where I'd love to hear from you in the chat. How relatable is this? You've got your support team, you're the success team, there's the engineering team. Everybody is in service to the customer, everybody is in service to the business, and yet everybody's sort of stuck in their silo, right? Can anybody relate to this? Let us know in the chat. With that said, we're also making time for a quick poll. Would love to hear, based on that diagram, how are you and your success support counterparts rolling up today? Is everybody rolling up and reporting into the same leader? Is there distribution among a support, leader and success leader? Or could there be another structure? We've been hearing all sorts of ways that this is being tackled right now. So let's read, Corey, I'll let you read some of these results that we're getting here.
Yeah, I'll give it just a few more seconds for folks to respond. Okay, I'll go ahead. One more second. I still see some numbers moving around, so don't want to prematurely stop it. Okay, I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So it looks like the majority of folks all report to the same leader, with 63%, but then 35% do report to different leaders, and then a small majority is some other structure.
Yeah, and for those of you that answered other, you have piqued my marketing curiosity. So do let us know what other is standing for. And I'm just going to read a couple of the chat responses too with regard to the silos, because again, making no assumptions, everybody has different size teams, different resources, different directives. I think that based on that reporting structure, that is going to be an indication of how fast you can move, how slow you can move. Robbie says it's definitely relatable. Jeff says, luckily I can't relate. Tom says, so familiar. Sam says, too familiar. Lots of really great, input here, and we'll continue to gather this input from everybody. But not only have these silos, predominantly been there for everybody, the reporting structure, the budget, the ability to go out and expand teams. Some teams are hiring, some teams are contracting, some teams are leveraging technology, some teams are just starting that digital journey. That's why we're talking about what we're talking about today, right? There's so much change and disruption that's happening that it's almost like I said, we've got to understand what the new normal is and what the new baseline is, right? So with the current success process and model, very, very well, necessary at the time that SaaS emerged. You had that proactive QBR and EBR with your customer. Typically what was happening was because data, and we'll talk a little bit about this, was more lagging indicator, you could get a little bit caught off guard by churn. Right now with this current economy, the headlines that we saw for 2023, the bottom two things were unfortunately realities for a lot of teams, Corey, right? You're being told you've got to do more with less, which means success has to absorb more. Talk about capacity planning. What happens when the capacity plan can't go to plan? And the same thing was happening on the support side as well. People weren't necessarily able to go out and hire more support reps to help that support experience, which impacts success. And as a result, we'd seen the headlines where a lot of companies in 2023 missed their revenue targets. And now there is a strong sense of urgency to let's fix what was broken in 2023. We've got to get this going and adjusted for 2024, right? And part of what has happened as a result of the rise of SaaS, it's not a bad thing, it is a reality, is that we've got a lot of tools on top of tools. And the reason why we're highlighting this is on the plus side, these tools give us a lot of insights and data that we can share across departments. Unfortunately, a lot of the processes with which we get that data are still manual, right? And so our hope today is after the webinar that you start thinking about ways that you could reduce, the manual work, the manual lift, and start to understand how to make this data more actionable and available to your teams in real time. Now, I don't know how many of you might laugh at this too, but I've heard for years the idea of, well, support is reactive and success is proactive. And given that urgency with regard to the revenue targets and needing to course correct from 2023, the pandemic and what have you, what's happening right now is that both support and success are needing to go back to being consultative at scale. right? And so there is a change happening. And this is why we asked that poll, how many of you are rolling up into the same leader? How many of you have different leaders? Depending upon who you ask in the C-suite, some are going to say, hey, we now know we customer support, customer experience, the success and support working together. That's going to be our competitive differentiator. You've got to be more consultative for customers at scale that want that type of experience. So these labels, unfortunately, no longer fit, right? And from my seat today, clearly I'm presenting to success teams and leaders, but on that voice of support, we are hearing and seeing that support leaders now are being tasked with revenue goals themselves. So this is, hey, this is what's happening. It's happening now. We want you to be prepared for this convergence, and we want to start getting everybody thinking differently than we've thought in years prior, right? Last but not least, competing priorities. Again, we're all unified in this idea of the customer experience, that time to value, providing the customer the software and getting them what they signed up for is critical and key. But everybody's got different metrics and measurements, right? Everybody's got different KPIs. And that's what we mean by competing priorities. Support historically was looking at their MTTRs and all these acronyms I could throw at you. Success obviously is looking at NRR. These are changing now. And again, it has to do with this reporting structure, right? A lot of change is happening, which is creating this need for us to go realign and get clear. And again, even look at different paradigms and ways with which we previously operated, right? So what else is blocking success and support alignment? I've got a few more examples here. Feel free to add any else in the chat as well. But I did see that there was somebody saying manual, so much manual work. The old models, activities that we did are under pressure by these rapid changes, right? And some examples of manual processes that were well intended, success logging into support tools to try to understand what's happening across the customers, success being copied on every single support email. Nobody has all the time in the day to be able to read all of that information, much less make sense of what it means from a trends or priorities perspective, right? Missing context. I was just telling Corey that, because there are these silos and sometimes a lack of communication for the lucky ones, will hear what you do to combat that. But escalations happen when the success team is like, I don't want my customer or our customer to churn. So I'm not sure how much of a priority this is for support or engineering. I'm going to escalate this ticket and escalate this ticket. Well, throwing out a ballpark number, one escalation on the lower end of the scale can be $10,000 per for the company. So, manually escalating multiple tickets for fear of churn isn't working and serving the business anymore, right? The fact that we're dealing with these lagging indicators, we have a lot of data. As I mentioned, we have a lot of technology and stacks and everything, but is that data actionable, right? We're going to talk a little bit about how you can start thinking about what needs to happen to make data actionable. Is it available in real time? Please let us know in the chat, what your window is for being able to get some of your customer data. Super curious, right? And then again, this idea of limited scope. I'm not sure how many of you prior to today have heard that line between support and success is thinning, but support leaders are being tasked with numbers on their head now. So it's this idea of how do we have mutual understanding of what each role is being measured on, depending upon that reporting structure, depending upon the business outcomes, depending upon our growth and expansion plans and forecasts, not just for this year, but for the next 3 to 5 years, right? So interestingly enough, this is so relevant. You're on the cusp of this change because Gartner just put out an article this week that says that by 2027, 30% of the Fortune 500 will consolidate post-purchase tasks, expansion, service, success, renewal into this unified customer-facing employee role. What does that mean? We're not just talking about now needing to be on the precipice of these things for the customer, but for your career too, right? For this idea of upskilling or hybrid CX leaders. I've spoken to a few leaders in my tenure at the Loops who are like, you know what? I've overseen success. Now I'm overseeing support, or vice versa. Again, furthermore reason why it's really critical to understand how to use these support insights or to better work with your support counterparts in the event you find yourself at the divergence of a hybrid role, right? So the key here that we're talking about is, again, because of the tooling and some of the out-of-the-box connectors, teams are getting some scope of the support insights, but they're not always getting them in real time. The product team isn't always getting them in real time. Engineering isn't always getting them in real time. And for just one more statistic before we start to get into like, what can you do about this, right? How can you think about this differently? There is a consulting company that does implementation for success and support tooling, and they scanned their entire database of customers. I believe the sample size was about 2,000 to 3,000, right? And of that, they found that 2/3 of their customers weren't using support insights. 1/3 were. Now multiply that at scale, amongst how many SaaS businesses there are, not just in North America alone, but across the globe. And that tells you why this is becoming such a critical time to realign and think about this data differently, action on this data differently. I think I've made that point pretty clear for everybody, right? The shift is here. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. What I am going to share with you that's happening for that real-time standpoint is your support interactions, your tickets, your emails, your chats. There's so much information that the customer is telling you that when you can leverage technology now at scale and in real time, the technology with the snap of a finger can send case resolution to the agent, right? It can do a sentiment overview for the success team. A major incident can become very clear for reporting. And this is the supercharging that we're talking about, right? Obviously, I get really excited about this. So, kind of shifting gears into how do we fix this, right? How do we fix this? I also don't have all the answers, so I welcome everybody to share some ways you might be thinking about this at present and trying to address this within your own organizations. But before we get into that, one of the key things is communication. So it's time for our next poll.
Just launch the poll. Give folks some
Perfect.
time to respond.
Yeah. I love watching these numbers move around, Corey.
Yeah. Give it a few more seconds. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, share out the results. So it looks like the majority of folks are within an other category, but then close behind weekly and monthly and quarterly is a very small fraction of folks there.
Yeah, other, please let us know what other represents. I think the weekly and the monthly is super promising, I'm glad to see that here today with, the amount of people that have signed up, but I'm very curious about others. So I will take just a moment to read almost daily. That makes me so happy. Bi-weekly, official meetings between two groups as a whole, none. So again, a lot of variety, here. Daily contact and responses. We've implemented a daily huddle. Now, for those of you that are sharing that this is happening daily, that's fabulous, right? When did that take place? Has that always been an occurrence, or was that as a result of, auditing and evaluating perhaps bottlenecks and challenges that were occurring across the business, right? Was there churn and you reverse engineered, hey, we've got to align on a daily huddle to be able to address that better? Please let us know. Connie says from the beginning, but it's more open and working with lately. Recent as of 2024. Laura, thank you for that. Laura says it's as a result of bringing the team, together. This is really great. Hong says, and this is speaking to that supercharge, we don't do this officially, but we do talk on Slack, right? And so that ability to work across maybe multiple time zones and locations, but still be aligned is really key, right? Aaron says the daily huddle is new. And as a result of us, it came from seeing the need to align as a team to provide the best customer experience for clients and ensure retention. That leads me to a little fun fact that I'll share with everybody that was published. Now, forgive me, I can't recall if I read it in the one of Salesforce's customer reports or if it was another Gartner asset for that matter, but customers were reporting, and it was about 80%, that they feel like they deal with different companies. Even though support and success work for the same business, every time they have to interact with these departments, they're feeling like as if it's two separate companies because that information hasn't been, back. Tom says this unified customer facing role is interesting, but nothing new. It's back to the future. This is what we called the technical account manager 20 years ago. The problem with these roles is that they are not scalable and those Swiss Army knives are hard to recruit. So, Tom, totally appreciate that perspective. What's happening, and I won't get too much into, AI is helping scale the role, and so it's not that every single customer needs a consultative experience. It's which customer needs that, and how can we identify that faster and have the account managers reach out to those individuals in real time versus trying to discern across the whole customer base who needs more consultative, who's better and doing fine with self-service and things of that nature, right? But really appreciate everybody's participation. Let's keep it up. We've got a few more things to cover here, and I still want to hear from you too, right? How do we fix this is where we had left off. So number one, it's really welcoming to see that people are already addressing the people problem. But it's not just enough to talk to each other and huddle up. We have to really double down on what are we doing to be more productive, right? And this is where we saw the rise of ChatGPT and LLMs and summarization and all of that. What I invite you to evaluate is on both sides of that support and success coin, what are actions that you're still doing right now that are manual, right? And what can you use today to start to replace that manual work, right? Two, with those huddles that you're having, how can you realign on outcomes? And this again goes back to that reporting structure. What's coming top down? How fast is it coming? How slow is it coming? But how are you assured that there's this constant realignment on the outcomes and that everybody's clear who's doing what and that the customer's clear who's doing what? That was something I heard, Corey, from a success leader, that sometimes the customer is not clear at all, right? I love this next one. What needs to happen to make the data actionable? If you could wave a magic wand, which you can with AI, and all of the sudden have those insights and have that data, what processes would have to change downstream to be able to put things in place? In one of the customer success forums I was reading, somebody said, I got all of this great data and feedback from my team and was able to show how we could bring in millions more and keep millions more of dollars. But when I went to the team, everybody was like a deer in headlights. We did not have, the infrastructure or the headcount to actually implement what was needed to make that data actionable. I think this is a very powerful question that you can go back to your discussions with your support, and even your sales and product and engineering counterparts on, right? Plugging the data gap. Because we talked about those data silos at the beginning, how many of you online today are grappling with a data gap that started off as a little bit of you could put a Band-Aid on it that is no longer able to be Band-Aid, right? Bandaged. Really critical time and inflection point to think, what do we need to be able to plug this data gap, right? Last but not least, I want to hear from you in these huddles that you're having with your counterparts, these weekly meetings over those Slacks. How are you approaching this idea of getting more productive and getting more collaborative with your support counterpart? Let us know in the chat. Mohammed says, can we get a copy of the slides? Okay. And for the purposes of time, we'll give you about another 30 seconds. Let us know how you're approaching this before we jump ahead. And the idea here is, of course, somebody mentioned burnout. And, again, that's why I made the statement about the capacity planning. It's like support and success are needing to do more, right? As budgets shift and, the approaches shift. So, it becomes really critical to think about what can I do to enhance, my productivity so that I don't burn out further, right? That I break back from that burnout. Moving on to what else can fix, right? So it's great to see that everybody is interacting with support. I'm curious to know, has your perception of support changed, right? Now that support and success are being pushed, to be this consultative, both focused on revenue and retention, are you still seeing support interactions as more of a symptom, or could it be possible, and this is something we love to say at the Loops, that support is a gold mine, right? Typically, the reason why that whole support as a symptom was originated was that, companies said, hey, we can't go hire umpteenth support reps to, help, close those gaps that are happening once somebody becomes an onboarded customer. So let's implement self-service, still a great tool, still very effective. But the paradigm that's shifting is that now you need to have that human in the loop, right? We've all heard that, be it success or even on the support side. How do you have that human in the loop? So the idea now is that we don't necessarily want to push these support interactions away. We want to be able to encourage support so that we can resolve cases faster, so that they can go back to the success team and say, oh, I was stuck on this hiccup and now I'm able to use the product, or other people on my team, I need those, additional seats and licenses. Support is a gold mine. It's also a gold mine for your product counterparts, right? Instead of wanting to go and maybe add new things to the product, hey, product team, can we use this support data and these insights to prioritize these clusters and cohorts of cases that, if we don't fix this, are going to churn, right? And that's a big thing that AI is enabling for teams in this day and age. Which leads me to the third thing that is helping us fix things, but also requires a little bit of adoption or expansion in our own approach to digital CS. Digital CS, much like the word AI, much like the word marketing, it has many meanings. It doesn't mean just one thing. The reason why we're sharing this with you pertains to that idea of the hybrid, CX leader of the future, the convergence and that thin line across support and success. Right now, you're hearing a lot that digital CS is synonymous with summarization, and that could be summarization of emails, summarization of the customer history, summarization of even the interactions across, these meetings that you're having with your support and success teams. Where it's evolving, where it means other things as well. Prediction, right? Prediction is a form of AI that's just as significant as generative AI, and prediction can help you understand how likely a customer is to churn. You can predict CSAT. There's a variety of different use cases, but the point here is to put something new on your radar so that you are upskilling and getting more familiar with what other options are available to you, particularly from support insights, right? We're all familiar with voice of the customer. Where this is actually evolving in a digital CS capacity is voice of the customer and sentiment extraction in a detail and way that you haven't seen before, presumably. So we'll talk about that in just a moment, but digital CS does mean many things. It's not just one thing, and it's not just, self-service necessarily, right? So with regard to that previous slide, the idea of upskilling and getting more familiar with prediction, not every customer escalates a case. Not every customer is the loudest. In fact, some of the customers sign up, meet with the success team, and then just they don't move further in the journey from there. And that's why the prediction part of AI is starting to become so key. And, we'll talk about why support is leaning into this more and leading the charge. We're putting it on your radar. So, in those weekly, monthly, daily huddles with your success support counterparts, you can start to ask them how they might be implementing this or thinking about this for the benefit of the success team. But the gist of it is that the customer journey is not linear, right? We certainly have playbooks and things that we do to manage to the best of our ability that time to value, but we deal with products, and products have bugs, and we deal with people and knowledge articles, and not everything is always clear. So this is where that prediction, particularly from the support insights, can come in and really help success with the snap of the fingers understand at scale who again needs more of that consultative, support or that consultative outreach. Now, on the topic of collaborating with new metrics, this is where things are starting to really evolve. Support is saying, hey, we want to start to help success understand topics that are trending across customer cohorts in real time. We want to start to bring in more ways to use and contextualize product usage data. This whole idea of the prediction of escalation and CSAT is really rooted in customer sentiment over time. So in just a moment, I'll share with you how sentiment in and of itself is taking on a new meaning and definition that we just want to be on your radar as well, because you will start to see this pop up more and more across webinars, your LinkedIn feed, and again, your support counterparts. So let's see, we've got a few things in the chat here. How do you get the product to listen? Support people are the guardians of your brand. Love these inputs here. They are, in fact, the guardians of your brand. In fact, the reason why we're talking about what that support agenda is, they're the ones with budget right now to go out and get some of this new tooling. The new digital CS framework, typically that is being influenced at that support level. And we just want success to understand what that could look like for you should this come into your organization, right? And so you've got your support team and your success team, as I mentioned, that are unifying the ability to look at the customer based on prediction and these predictive insights, right? For that product and engineering team, it's being able to give them that engagement data. Look at what's happening across this group of customers. This much revenue's at risk. That certainly gets products attention from, hey, we're going to prioritize the roadmap, but adjust it accordingly because we could lose this revenue, but they need that ability to see it in real time, right? Last but not least, support and engineering with the backlog, with managing the cases, really being able to personalize and prioritize. When I first started at the Loops, I was floored at the amount of teams that I heard were still using Google Sheets to manage backlog. Not a bad place to be. Again, it goes back to do what you can with what you can, control the controllables. But this is how things are evolving. So we just wanted this to be on everybody's radar. Sentiment is evolving, as I've mentioned to you. So before you know it, you will start to see a lot more dialogue, discussion around sentiment moving from good, bad, or ugly and only on individual tickets to sentiment and looking at it across the customer over multiple cases, multiple instances, and in pulling that support data, right? Be it the chats, be it the tickets, any sort of correspondence that they're having. So this is what we're going. This is here and now, but this will start to become a little bit more table stakes across, support and success organizations. There is an evolution that is taking place as far as sentiment's concerned, and it's pulling in signals from these support interactions with the machine learning and the algorithms. Again, looking at trends and how things are occurring based on support interactions every time. Is support helping the customer and helping success? Are these support interactions making a more positive customer experience, a more negative customer experience? And then again, management can go in real time and fix what the issue is, be it the product, the agent, the geography, and so on. with all of this, and it makes my heart happy that there is these dialogues happening across support and success, you become even more data driven than you've been, right? I mean, without a doubt, success has always been a data driven department. You've known your numbers. You've had to reinforce knowing your numbers because of questions that you're getting asked from the CFO. But this is how things start to change, right? You do start to understand, are issues and topics trending with other customers across multiple customers in real time versus being copied on those emails and seeing things kind of one by one, right? You start to understand, okay, there is a correlation here between that positive and negative support experience in likelihood of churn, right? Is this customer likely to escalate a ticket? From that success lens, can I reach out to them and try to see what the blocker is, right? Or do I have that data to help me move them past that blocker? What was the sentiment? Was support interactions, multiple interactions, not just one. We can't, in order to understand root causes, we can't look at things on that sole instance or interactive basis. And again, which customers have open high impact tickets? Success always knows the top 10. Does support know the top 10, right? And how do we use this alignment between these two teams to better impact the business outcomes? The end goal here obviously is efficiency, right? So some of you may already be data stitching and breaking silos, as we've said, from a process standpoint, meeting frequently and using Slack and those tools help. Really doubling down on this idea of the proactive synergy on both teams, right? We do have the same goal here, and it'll be super interesting to see how, the measurements change over this next year or even 18 months. All of this, though, leads to the happier customers, better word of mouth, that earned media, dark social that you may be hearing about and seeing in your LinkedIn feeds as well. That quicker time to value, super critical, right? Like the customer signed up to get something from your solution. Are they able to do that through this success and support alignment? That is the goal here, right? Which leads to improved retention and revenue, something that we will all celebrate, at the end of 2024. So how to start working on this? There are varying degrees of team sizes and reporting structures for today. If you find that you answered in the chat that you just can no longer take the manual work, that it really is slowing down your ability to supercharge, then it is urgent, right? The beautiful thing about this is if you look at this from a lean business model canvas, some of the tools that you're already using have automation. Can you add in more automation to reduce some of that manual work, that manual back and forth that you're using, right? Some of you may already be at an automation level. So now with this newer understanding of digital CX, both that support and success alignment, are there other use cases that you could bring in to help you better align towards these revenue goals, time to value, and retention with your success counterparts? Last but not least, we still are on an early adopter curve as far as innovation's concerned, is optimized. The companies that are using what's available at their disposal to be able to bring support, success, product, and engineering together in real time and make that data that they're getting actionable with the click of a finger, right? And that's what we're all striving for. The worst thing that could happen is that we get this data and we can't do anything with it, right? So what to do next? The thing from today is we hope that there has been an aha or something that has made you think differently about the way you might be approaching this support and success alignment, going back and auditing that current disconnect. While you're huddling now, all of this is happening in real time in 2024, and it's great. What else can you do to take it to the next degree, right? Is it replacing some of that manual work, leaning into automation, looking at the data, getting better aligned on the data, bringing in more AI? These are all very valid things. Understanding what support is being tasked with to go out and look for in the market specific to AI as well. It is going to impact the success team. So those conversations should be taking place, which leads us to bullet point number 2. How can you improve that current feedback loop between support and success? If you've been in the midst of doing that, I invite you to leave in the chat what's worked for you and for your team. We're all here to learn. And I think that peer-to-peer ability to say, this is what me and my team are doing, this is how we're thinking about this, is a really, really great takeaway from webinars like these, right? Last but not least, whether we want to or not, it's always, how can you get this done as of yesterday? So we are needing to accelerate our productivity, and the contextualized customer data and this digital CS that we're hearing about that is in fact doing that for us, right? But we do need to lean into it. What can we do, whether it be upskilling around what other options are available to us specific to AI, certainly just understanding how things are changing, right? Some of the old ways that we've approached things are now having new innovation occur. This is what we're talking about when we speak to accelerating productivity and really getting more contextualized with your customer data. So I've got a real world example of mature, from this idea of career paths are changing, right? Greg Gilletto is actually a success leader who's now overseeing support and has brought both of his teams together. They are a geographically dispersed team. I think that remote work, Corey, while that might be common for us a few years post pandemic, it certainly was a change for a lot of organizations initially in this collaboration as well. There were multiple product lines that Greg and his team have, and they do have an academy for that self-service motion to help, customers onboard and achieve time to value. But where his team really wanted to lean further into the support insights was understanding trends, right? What were the tickets that were coming in across what customers? And then how can we take those insights back and understand success's approach to who's getting the most attention? How can we influence the product team faster with that trend data? So as a result of this, Greg and his team did achieve a 37% operational efficiency gain. And it really started with, again, evaluating what's manual that we're doing right now. How can we use this data accordingly? How can we remind support and success that we shouldn't be moving in different directions, that we are stewards of team retention, which is why you see that down here as the goal. So I will open this up for any feedback, thoughts, questions, chat discussion.
Yes, thank you so much, Jaclyn. Again, please go ahead and submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll see how many we have and we can get to. And let's see. For our first question, Jaclyn, do you have any tips for building a unified culture between CS and support, especially if they don't roll up to the same leader as you talked about earlier?
Yeah, I think great question. I like the idea of, the Slack threads starting. I mean, I think we often hear, Corey, that everything rolls downhill or it starts at the top, and that's not always the case, right? What do we say? It's how do you manage up, right?
Mhm.
As well. So I'm not saying that everybody has to go and get town halls or anything like that to be able to manage up. But I think a lot of times we lack the ability to whiteboard, even if it's virtually, right? How can you get everybody together around a really fun brainstorming session, right? And I like some of these more design thinking types of questions. If we could wave a magic wand in an ideal world, we didn't have any blockers across budget, technology, this, that, or the other thing, what would, our culture and aligned customer experience look like? And even challenge your teams to get a little bit pie in the sky, because it's within those types of conversations and brainstorming, and we know this as marketers, that sometimes these little millimeter differences start to emerge where you're like, you know what, I hadn't realized that we weren't fixing something that could be tweaked very simply, or that we hadn't workshopped a problem. So I think it really starts with something that's a little bit more fun and abstract and design thinking orientated. And then from there, okay, when you have your next, group meeting with the team, how do you start to trickle that in across like your company communication? How do you start to take a little bit more action? Of course, if you are managing up, they love to see how that's going to impact ROI. So starting to put some numbers, behind that. But that's my initial suggestion. And again, if anybody has tangible examples of the way you've done this too. The other thing too, I think it's remember that culture and that alignment is a living, breathing thing. So what you
Mhm.
create today isn't ever set in stone. It is an evolution. Look at how the advances in technology that we've undergone this past year have really forced everybody to almost like a piece of clay mold the businesses in ways that maybe they hadn't thought possible before.
Awesome. I love that you started out talking about um, listening to your team there in terms of unifying culture. So, let's see. We have a question that says, how are people using AI to streamline communication or gathering results from various metrics?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The summarization feature that a lot of tools currently have at the moment. I mean, in from a summarizing case, trends or here's what happened. As far as metrics are concerned, there are algorithms that get programmed to be able to take your business data, right? So I think that's what's really key. You do need to be able to feed an AI engine your specific business data. It's not that you just pull Chat GPT into your business and say, be a McKinsey consultant, replace a data analyst, and do all this for me, right? There are some of those guardrails. But there are tools that people are utilizing that augment the existing tools in the marketplace that help them. Many of your existing tools have, summarization. For example, if Corey and I were just meeting, I have a meeting note taker that comes with me to every single Zoom meeting. And with the click of a button, I can actually summarize that, put that in Google Doc, and share that with my other colleagues. So that summarization feature is so, so, so key right now. And then again, looking for understanding that you can use Chat GPT and prompt it to do some thinking for you. But in order for it to start analyzing data and what have you, number one, there's obviously security that is required. Number two, you need to look for companies that built the model so that it's called a semantic layer, that it can understand, this is the output that I'm trying to get this AI and this algorithm to generate for me. And we do have a blog on semantic layers on our website. It's been fascinating what I've learned with regard to AI. But Mia, hopefully that answers your question, for you.
Awesome. We have a question that says, how to get established support teams to value a customer success team.
Oh, I love this. One of my so there I go to a conference called Support Driven, and there's a leader there who said, "Hey, we need to give success the keys to the car." You know? And so I think can can success, it goes back to, is there that divide in that definition? Support is, reactive, success is proactive. Kimmy, I'm going to give you my LinkedIn because I actually want to ask this on LinkedIn. And there's somebody in particular who's been that hybrid CX leader. Her name is Camille Emma Faacy. And I want to see what Camille says she's done from a real world example. But I do think it has to do with going to the support leadership, right? And bringing data to them and, trying to get some dialogue going. As you have heard, support our firefighting, right? They are constantly in this like firefighting motion. Somebody mentioned that word burnout, depending upon the support structure. I really think it starts with, opening up that dialogue and that conversation, and also perhaps understanding, why they may not be valuing success right now. Changing perception within the business is a super fascinating topic, but it would really start with what is that blocker, right? And really trying to understand it and maybe going to the support leader first. But Kimmy, you give me the thumbs up in the chat and let me know if I could use that as a question today on LinkedIn, and we'll see what other established, leaders answer as far as those that have managed support and success before.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, we have another question. I think, do you have any examples of some automations that can make the most impact when we're talking about sharing support insights?
Yes. So I'm reading this here from additional context. We use Zendesk, just migrated from HubSpot to Salesforce, SalesLoft. Our CS team does everything from post-sales, onboarding, account managing through renewal. Bandwidth is tight. So of course, everybody says, I mean, I think Stelly, it really depends, or Shelly, forgive me, I don't have my glasses on. It depends on how big the team is, what do you need? Naturally everybody says we can do a lot of automations around SLAs or things that are happening with the customers between Zendesk and Slack, right? There are widgets and things that you can go out. We can do automations between Zendesk and Salesforce, although those can be a little bit cumbersome to connect. It really does depend on the use case. Automation for automation's sake may not necessarily always work, but DM me, let me know, specifically what you're looking for. And, this is why the loops exist. We do provide a lot of automations from that standpoint of giving you the data and doing that data analysis piece in real time to help make things more actionable. But I will drop, Corey, in here my LinkedIn because I know we have Somia's at the end. And I do enjoy being able to answer everybody's questions. There are some additional inputs I need to be able to answer them too. So one of the questions I had for everybody is, what was like your one aha moment from today? Like after today, what's one takeaway that you're going to go back, be it to your success team, your support team? What was that one or two things that you learned or are thinking about differently as a result of spending time with us today on the webinar? And then Praful, I see your question too, but I want to hear from you all. Perfect. Mia says using support insights to find the churn point and present a product. Michelle says how digital CS can leverage insights to drive proactive engagement. Jonathan says leverage data to make CS proactive instead of reactive. Kimmy says bringing our teams together, the value is there. We need to help highlight this. Robbie says, at the very least, we need to be meeting on a regular basis to share the insights. Megan says, Megan, you're making me blush. Today, I got our team talking about everything, which is our number one takeaway. We appreciate you. I appreciate Corey, Churn Zero. I appreciate Somia. She's a phenomenal leader to work for, and I've learned a ton from her as it pertains to this space and the problem that she saw that existed, right? Which was a lot of teams need this to be happening in real time, recurring basis.
Absolutely. Jaclyn, I was wondering if you could share, are there any indicators that would come up through support that might signal an opportunity for an upsell or an expansion opportunity for customer success?
Yeah, I mean, clearly on the product feedback side, I think teams are always a little bit more attuned depending upon how mature your product and success alignment is on the roadmap. And so support is usually, somebody said it, the brand ambassador. They're that first line of interaction or defense, for lack of a better word, with the customer. That's why it's so critical to be able to mine that product feedback, because it may very well be there on the roadmap. And you want your success team to be able to say, hey, this is actually coming. Can we start talking now about this? The other thing, Corey, too, that we hear internally is, you have a certain number of seats initially when people say, hey, we're going to get like 20 licenses or 30 licenses. And then support is starting to hear good support. You're going to have, Somia always says this, products are not infallible. There are going to be bugs, there are going to be issues, but it's how you handle it that can make or break the customer's experience. So if you can triage and troubleshoot and fix something and get them back on the right course, then they're going to be like, we love this. We want to get other teams, other departments involved. So sometimes it may
Yeah.
not even be from a feature set request. It's, hey, my marketing team is starting to talk about how they could use your solution. In the case of the loops, it is starting with support, and like our success team wants to start talking to you. So I think that there's a variety of different signals from product feedback to, as you start to do that more human in the loop support involvement, are you hearing that there's, opportunities for other departments or even other people within the department to expand?
Got it. I love that. And what about on the flip side, aside from just an angry customer, is there anything that like support might be able to like see, oh, this account might actually be at risk of churning? Any kind of
Absolutely.
trend data?
Oh, yeah. So take it for this is like a specialized, part of AI, but it's where scoring can come in, impact score. It's the contextualization piece. I'll bring it to you this way, Corey.
Mhm.
When you are connecting the CRM data with the support data, with the success data, with the bug data, all of a sudden you understand in real time how much revenue is at risk if a customer doesn't get this resolved, how long that case has been open for, right? What the sentiment of that customer is. I heard from one customer where sometimes a case can be in the backlog for like 6 months, and that customer is nearing that renewal more and more and more and more. And the CSM is just like sitting on pins and needles. That's why you need this real time view. It's to help, hey, now you can go back to the engineering team and say, if you don't have a talk track, I think that's the worst thing, right? Like sometimes no answer in success
Yeah.
is like the worst possible place a customer can be. As long as you can say, we're getting to this, we have an update on the timeline, right? There's a lot of products that were supposed to be released at the end of 2023 that got pushed back. You can rest assured that the success team was reaching out to those customers to say, we just want to let you know, here's the updated release date, as opposed to the opposite, right? Nobody likes surprises. So when you can use these support insights to be able to adjust, that communication and that talk track, and again, make it real time, that's really the key here.
I love that. I love that. Some
So
people are
Corey,
showing,
on that
yeah.
on that theme, we've got some really great resources to help everybody further. A big topic at TSIA this last year, which we participated in, was this idea of breaking down the data silos. JB Wood, who's the CEO, he gave his keynote. The keynote itself is now gated on the TSA site, but on the Loops blog, we actually broke down like the top 3 takeaways for you. So I can put this link, in the chat so you can access this. Churn zero, this idea, Corey, of that single source of truth, that
Mhm.
in and of itself, reducing the amount of manual work that you're doing and inefficiencies that you have. This is such a great resource that you have as well. And then to help everybody, again, kind of adjust thinking caps around how the metrics are evolving, how, this whole convergence between support and success is taking place. We put together a free guide. We featured the CCO of Netscope, Ben Sates. We've got some quotes from Greg in there that you saw from Bloomreach, a variety of different, leadership perspectives and points of view, but all of these are available to you. So I'll drop them in the chat real quick. And unless there's any other questions, we can hang on. But thank you all for a very engaging session. Thank you, Corey and Churn Zero.
Yeah.
Go out there and supercharge.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us. I do want to remind everyone that we are recording today's session, and we will be sending out a link tomorrow with a PDF of the slides. I know that was asked earlier, and a link to the recording. There will be a webcast that will pop up at the end of this, or sorry, a survey that will pop up at the end of this webcast. Appreciate if you just take a minute before logging off to provide your feedback. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And thank you again, Jaclyn, and to the Loops for doing such a great webinar.
It's our pleasure. I'm just dropping these resources here.
Yes, I do want to get that.
I'll drop my LinkedIn, and let me make sure I grab Kimmy's question too, so I can drop that on social media today too. We all learn together. So thank you all for letting me to graciously step in for Soumya.
No, thank you.
yeah, you'll have the link to our website if you have any questions about the loops as well.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.